It's Christmas Eve. Let's talk about trolls. Okay, how to win with Gloomspite Gitz, Troggoths edition. Look at this fantastic art. Just fantastic. Okay, so let's do a quick overview of the army and talk about what it does well and what it does poorly, and then we'll talk about the rules and how specifically they relate to Trogs. We'll go through all the enhancements. We're going to go through everything. So sit down, buckle in, let's get ready. Okay, so first, Trogs are a very tanky army. They have good ward saves. I think the Troggoths have just a flat 5-up ward save. The Dankhold Trogboss can get a 4-up ward save with an enhancement. And I don't believe, Trug doesn't have a built-in one, but he does have a way of getting a 5-up and some other kind of defensive things. Lots of good saves, right? Trogs have a 3-up save under the light of the bad moon. They tend to have pretty good wounds, right? Like Rockguts and Fellwaters both have 4 each, and the Dankhold and Trogboss have 10 and 12 respectively, right? Trug has 16. There's a lot of wounds involved, and it's quite a good. I wrote this twice. I wrote that they're smashy. They have good rend and good damage, right? Rockguts are going to have 2 rend most of the time. Yeah, I mean, Dankholds, 2 rend is what you'll see pretty standard on Trogs across the board. They have a castle playstyle, so that can be a pro if that's kind of what you're into, right? They're really good at putting up walls and marching a big clump into the middle of the map. They have really good battle tactics. There's, it's relatively easy to get at least. Normally, if you can reliably get 2 to 3 battle tactics out of your book, you're just singing. And I believe this one has even more than that. So that's good. Rockets says battle line. Rockets are fantastic. Rockets are absolutely fantastic. They're a great unit. So to make a battle line, you just need to have a Dankhold Trogboss as your general. And this can be Trug too. A Trug has the Dankhold Trogboss keyword. So if you just have a Trug in your list, you can bring Rockguts as a battle line. That's all it takes. And the army has lots of good reach over fighters. And so by that I mean units that have range 2 or range 3 on their attacks. So for example, Trug, both of his attacks are 3 range, and so he can sit behind a unit of Rockguts and then reach over and fight. And then Dankholds, Rockguts, Fellwaters all have 2-inch range, so you can stick things in front of them, and then if you get charged, you can still fight over, which is pretty good. Cons: the army is slow. All the Trogs have a 6-inch move, which it's not bad, but there's not you have your Hand of Gork teleport spell, but there's not really a lot of other tricks to help them get into place. Like in Orcs, you have Mighty Destroyers, right? But in this case, you're kind of stuck to that 6-inch movement. They're light on boots on objectives because it's a relatively elite army where you have fewer models, and not a lot of them count for anything more than 1 point. Rockguts are 4 wounds, so they're 1 point. Right, Dankholds are 2, and then they're not 5 because they're not monsters. And Trug is a monster, so he counts as 5. But generally speaking, if you're playing like a Gitz or a Squig list, you might have, Hoppers, Bounders, Herd, Stabas, right? So when you're building a list, it's in a Trog list. Sometimes it's a good idea to have 1 unit of Stabas, so you can just put some feet on objectives, right? Also light on monsters. We got Trug, and then we can take a Trog boss can become a monster with an enhancement, and it's light on shooting. Fellwaters have a shot, right? But it's only 6 inches, and it's not so much a ranged attack for damage. It does deal decent damage, but really what it's there for is to remove all the saves off of your opponent. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And right, so Gitz in general don't have access to very good shooting, but Trogs in particular don't really have. They might have some of the best shooting, because Rockguts. If you have a reinforced unit of Rockguts, what you're going to do is you're going to pick up 6 dice, and then on a 3-up, it's immortal. So it's not bad, right? It's not bad, but it's not very good shooting. So let's look at some of the battle traits. So the Bad Moon. So for us, what we really want is that +1 save. And you kind of want it all the time. We're not going to be able to take advantage of the Moon Clan Rally or the Spiders, or even the squigs run in charge, right? Because we're playing Trogs, but they get +1 save, and you kind of need to make sure that they're going to get that +1 save all the time. I think of all of the I think of all of the ways that you can play a Gitz army, I think that Trogs are the ones that need the light of the bad moon the most. And so, thankfully, they're a castle, so Scragrot can help a lot with that. Then we also have is it a heroic action or is it a monstrous action? The Wade and Smash is a heroic action. So this is for a Dankhold Trogboss in combat, which can include Trug. Keep that in mind. So it's only a Dankhold Trogboss within 3 inches of enemy. You can hear this heroic action. Cool. So if you're already stuck in combat at the beginning of the turn, you make a 6-inch move. Have to still finish within 3 inches of any enemy unit. So you can leave combat with one thing and get in combat with another thing. At the end of the move, roll a die for each enemy within 1 inch. On a 2-up, it suffers D3. So you can pretty easily, if you're trying to get into the thick of it, put yourself in a position where you can, on a 2-up, you can deal D3 mortal wounds to 2 different things. And that's, like, pretty good, right? Like, really, the damage isn't the thing here that's interesting. It's the repositioning. That's interesting, right? 6-inch move out of combat into something else can be quite strong, right? Like, you can move around something and get into the little weak support units in behind. So that can be pretty good. So for sub-factions, the Glog's Megamob is your go-to sub-faction. So this is the one that says that you can heal so all the Trogs, they get their regeneration ability or their greater regeneration ability at the beginning of every turn. And then in addition, any Troggoth unit that fights can then use their greater regeneration ability immediately. So on a unit like Trug, for example, so he's going to get D3 +3, if I'm remembering this correctly. Trug. I believe so. Or is it just D3? No, it's dumb. On the War Scroll, it says regeneration, and it says, like, oh, you can heal with D3. And then it says, whenever you do this, you just add 3. So instead of saying D3, it just says, instead of saying D3 +3, it just says D3. And I think that might be as a way of making sure it doesn't interfere with the greater regeneration wording, right? Because that's a D6 for, like, the Trog bosses or whatever. So, I don't know. So, like, what this means is that you can, if Trug has no wounds, or if some big Dankhold boss or Troggoth has no wounds, it means that you can sort of, like, leave them, ignore them a little bit in combat, let them take some hits, and then hit back and heal up those wounds. It's really annoying even. It's really good on, like, on the big Trogs, but it's also good on Rockguts. It's like, if you don't kill a model, he's going to heal back up again, right? Any wounds that are left over on a model are going to sort of disappear. And, I mean, that's kind of, I think that's your obvious go-to. You can also play King's Gitz, where you're playing, like, you know, if you want 6 Rockguts to come back as 3 Rockguts and you want to play that recursion game, you can still do like a Clammy Hand. If you're playing Trug, you can still play like a Clammy Hand King's Gitz style and just keep bringing stuff back. And that's okay, right? A unit of 3 Rockguts comes back out of the Loon Shrine as 2 Rockguts. So you could play like 4 units of Rockguts and just keep and like sort of throw them away at your opponent, right? And be very risky with them, and you just keep bringing back more Rockguts. Like, I think it's a viable strategy. And then you could also do a Bad Snatcher, right? So if you wanted just to go heavy into the magic, you know, you're going to forfeit that regeneration from the Glog's Megamob, but all of your wizards are going to get to recast their spells. There's definitely a style where you play a bunch of Trogs and a bunch of casters, and you play Bad Snatchers. And you're just, like, throwing endless spells, and, like, you're, like, re-rolling one of the dice with before you have to decide to use primals is really powerful. It's really quite good. You know, you're going to re-roll that one. It's going to help you cast Blizzard. It's going to help you cast everything. And it's not once per game either. The Bad Snatcher says each time a casting roll is made for a friendly Moon Clan wizard. Bad Snatcher's Moon Clan, right? So this is your Fungoid Cave Shamans, right? You can re-roll one of the die. It's very good. So it's definitely a viable option. Oh yeah, baby. Sorry, I meant to hit mute. But I didn't, so we're good. Command traits. So Alpha Trog. So Alpha Trog, what it does is it gives you a monster. it gives you a monster. It turns this Troggoth into a monster, which means he counts as 5 on the objectives. And in an objective or in a boot light army, getting this can feel really good. It can feel quite good, quite important, right? To have, and it also gives you access to monstrous actions. So you can smash Rebel, you can roar, you can do all kinds of good stuff. It's actually pretty decent. Trog Smash. This feels like a worse version of Alpha Trog, right? It just kind of feels like a worse version. 2-up D3 to everything around you is fine, or you can do a 2-up D3 every turn, right? Because you only get to do it once per battle. So I think that Trog Smash is just kind of worse, right? What you want is to take the Alpha Trog, so you can just stomp. And the Loon Skin, I mean, you get to bring an extra Endless spell. It's probably going to be the Malevolent Moon. And in a list where everything has to have a be under the light of the bad moon to be good, I mean, Loon Skin I think is good. Loon Skin is good. What you can do is you can have like one group of Rockets with a Dankhold Trog boss who can bring out the Malevolent Moon to make sure that everyone's under the light of the bad moon for that 3-up save. And on the other side of the battlefield, you can have Scragrod, who himself gives a 12-inch moon, and then you're like, well, I have like these 2 little castles, each with 6 Rockets in front of it, and they're always going to be under the light of the bad moon, pretty much. So, I mean, that can be pretty good. Remember that either your army must include a Trug or have a Trog boss as general to unlock Trogs' battle line. Good note. Artifact of Power, Glowy Howzit. The Glowy Howzit is pretty good. The bearer has a ward of 4-up at the end of each phase if the bearer was allocated any wounds in that phase and that were not negated. So if you negate them with a 4-up ward, right, you roll a die, and on a 1, you get rid of the 4-up ward. This is pretty good. If you're planning on bringing your Trog boss into the fight, if you want to get him into combat, this is pretty good. If you're planning on keeping him in the back lines and just kind of hanging out with them, then it's not as good. Speaky Skull Fetish. So you roll 3 dice, and for every 6, you get a command point. Super unreliable, right? Each one has a 1 in 6 chance. So it's like, it's bad math. You know, you might get 1 every other turn. Cool. So inconsistent. But the bearer can issue the same command up to 2 times in the same phase. A command point is spent each time that it's issued. So if you compare this, or if you combine this with other things, then this can actually be kind of good. The Speaky Skull Fetish. Issuing all-out attack and also giving +1 attacks to 2 units can feel good. But I can't remember where that other thing comes from. I can't remember. We're going to find it. So this is, of course, with the Shepherd of Destruction ability. So this is off the Dankhold Trog Boss War Scroll. When this unit issues all-out attack command to a friendly Gloomspite Gitz Troggoth in the combat phase, until the end of that phase, add 1 to the attack's characteristics of melee weapons used in that attack. So this is where it can kind of like, you know, it does cost you 2 command points, but a Dankhold can be like, okay, this unit of Trogs gets +1 attacks and +1 to hit, and then this other unit of 6 Rockets gets +1 attack and +1 to hit. Like, that can actually feel pretty good. So this is sort of what I meant with Glowy Howzit. If you're planning on bringing your Trog boss into the fight, you want to have a 4-up board, but if you kind of want him to sit in the back and just give out commands, then Speaky Skull Fetish is at its best here, right? It's at its best here. And then we have Pet Gribbly. So this is add 1 to the bear's wound characteristic, meh. In addition, each time a wound is allocated to the bear and not negated, roll a die. On a 1, the Pet Gribbly is squished. When the Pet Gribbly is squished, the bear becomes enraged for the rest of the battle, and add 1 to hit rolls and wound rolls for attack made by the bear while they are engaged. So you can only put this on a Dankhold Trog boss. So if you get +1 to hit, +1 to wound, it puts you on 2s and 2s, but you're still only on 4 attacks. Like, you could go multiple games with nothing happening here. Essentially, what your opponent can do is they can just decide to ignore your Dankhold Trog boss, because he's not going to be dealing a ton of damage, right? So you just ignore it, and then if they're smart players and they just ignore this thing, you'll never get it. And if you never get it, you're not getting any value from it. And if you're not getting any value from it, then why are you choosing it? right? So you might have better luck taking an artifact on a non-Troggoths unit. Not gonna lie. Staff of Sneaky Stealing is good. Alright, so the artifacts of power, I feel you could take one for a Trog boss, or you could just leave it and put it on something else instead. An Arcane Tome seems pretty good on a Squig boss or something, on a Loon boss, right? Just having that seems okay, you know. So let's look at some spells. Oops. Do I have multiple of these? Yeah, I do. But so I don't know why it says Spider Fang here. 1 second. So for lore of for the lore of all the different spells and options that you have, Spider Fang spells aren't really worth considering. They're not particularly good. So, you know, the Hand of Gork is very strong. I would almost say it's a requirement in this really slow, marchy castle army. I think it's necessary. Itchy Nuisance and Nick It are situationally good, and just like with Squigs, they're best left for a Scragrot or a Fungoid Cave Shaman if you need it, right? Like if you have those one or both of those units, then you can kind of get access to all the spells, and that's good enough. But overall, it's just the teleport really that you're looking for spells, at least from our book spells. And then Primal Frost, well, Blizzard is Blizzard, right? Blizzard's a good spell, so you can take that on something. Hoarfrost in this army is only okay. It's only okay. The reason is lots of your attacks are hitting on 3s and 3s, or 3s and 2s. Like a Dankhold Trog boss has 3s and 2s. Rock Guts are on 3s and 3s, and everything has 2 rend. So what are you using Hoarfrost for? If you roll a 3, you get rend. Okay, so you're getting +1 rend. Sure, Gobapalooza does that all by himself, right? But sure, getting +1 rend. And if you roll a 1 or a 2, it's you get +1 to hit, right? Because hit rolls of 1 fail. So you can either get +1 to hit or +1 rend with a spell cast. It just kind of seems kind of meh, to be honest. It's not bad, right? It's not bad, but it's Hoarfrost is not particularly good in this army. What you want for Hoarfrost is a really high volume of dice with 0 rend. That's why it works so good on Tusks and Hooves for Gorgruntas, right? Because they have 4 each. So it's 12 dice with no rend. Perfect. Give that 3 rend, and all of a sudden it hits way harder. So endless spells are good, right? Endless spells are good. Malevolent Moon is good. Endless spells are good if you're not sure what to cast. Key units. So here, Trug, not as fighty as you would think. Not as fighty as you would think, and kind of swingy. He has a low volume of dice. He does 6 attacks total. And then at the bottom of his profile, when he has 13 plus wounds, he only does 3 attacks. And I felt this way when I just have a single Dankhold Troggoth, because a single Dankhold Troggoth only has 4 dice. And even though it's 3s and 2s, it's what happens if you just roll kind of low? The smaller the volume of dice, the more variable the attacks can be. And so when you need Trug, and then it's Murphy's Law, when you need Trug to hit really hard, he's going to whiff. And when you don't need him to hit really hard, then he'll be fine, right? Then he will hit hard. He'll overkill that 1 wound idiot left in a unit, right? And his damage is also, 4 of his attacks that reduce down to 1 attack as he degrades does d6 damage. So, it's another filter. So let's say you're rolling 4 dice, you have to beat 3s and 3s, okay? And then, so that's 2 filters, and then your opponent has to save, and then there's another filter. His other attack, Mighty Antlers, is D3 plus 3, significantly better, because the minimum that you can do if you hit both is 8. The minimum you can do if you hit both attacks is 8. The minimum that you can do if you hit all 4 of his Iron Shell Club abilities is 4, even though there's double the attacks. So, maths. Not as fighting as you would think. In just the regular army, so not the Army of Renown, all of Trug's abilities only affect him, not all your army. So it's he gets a ward of 5 up, He can ignore non-6 to hit rolls for shooting. He can get a command point, or he can be like a command point, whatever machine. Each time a dice or roll it at each time this unit receives a command. On a 2-up, you receive a command point. So on a 2-up, you get free commands. So he can, he can move 6 and reroll charges and redeploy and all those things without command points being spent. So that's like fine. Improve the Ren characteristics of his melee weapons by 1, +1 attacks. And then if you roll the 1 on the 6, he suffers D3 mortal wounds. So it's like he doesn't. A lot of these things are kind of defensive and offensive. And again, it's like you get to roll a number of dice. At the start of the hero phase, you roll, I think, 4 dice at the start of his table, and you get to pick the best one. But when you need a particular one, you're not going to get it, right? So I don't know. It's just he's too inconsistent, I feel, in the army. He's just kind of too inconsistent. He's okay. I don't want to say he's bad. He's fine, but he's a little bit inconsistent, and I'm not sure what role he plays. Right? Like, he's not a throw at your opponent monster. Like, I don't know. It's tricky with him. Troggoths, you want to take him as a frontliner or a backline hero. Which one you want to do? This decision is going to dictate what enhancements you take for him. We've talked about this already, but it's something very serious to consider and like good to think about. He has a 4-up spell ignore, which is good. Yeah, he's got his crushing grip ability, which is one of those like pick an enemy model and then kill it. So that is really powerful. You have to roll equal to or greater than the model's wound characteristic. So on a unit champion, 6 units, there's one right in the middle. You can just reach out and grab it and break coherency. Pretty strong. Dank holds reinforced can be quite terrifying. They are fightier than a Trogboss. A Trogboss is tankier than Dankhold Troggoths, but Dankholds are fightier. They deal D3. They have +1 to wound, and they deal D3 +3 instead of D6 damage. So, and then if you reinforce them, you have 8 of them. Sorry, you have 2 of them, not 8 of them. I don't even know where that number came from. If you reinforce them, you have 2 of them, and 2 of them side by side can be quite scary. Rockets are very good. The end. Fellwater, very good standing behind Rockets, waiting for that Unleash Hell. Something is going to charge into you, you're going to Unleash Hell, you're going to strip it of all of its bonuses, and then that 2 rend from the Rockets is going to just cleave through whatever charged into you. You're a very good castle, and one of the reasons is because of Fellwaters. Boingrot Bounders are still very strong cavalry and are the best cavalry option for this slow army. So a friend of mine was playing this list, or a Troggoth list, and he played Trug, and after playing through multiple games with them, he sort of is considering that Bounders are just going to be better. They're fast, and this is a slow army, so that's good. They come back out of the Loon Shrine, right? So. And then for Wizards, you have lots. Scrag, Fungoid, Madcap, and Web Spinner are all worth considering. The thing about Web Spinners, he's 5 points cheaper, and he has a 5-up board. He doesn't have as much utility as a Fungoid, but if you throw Blizzard on a Web Spinner, then like you can, if you want to have a whole bunch of Wizards and you need to save 10 points, you can downgrade a Madcap into a Web Spinner, and it's like fine. Right, it's fine. The thing about the Madcap that he does is that once per game he can cast any spell in the lore book. So that's like the Nick It, right? Like, or he can cast a teleport spell. He can cast whatever it is that you need him to that turn. Yeah, I think that's right. No, he can just cast an extra spell. He can just cast 1 additional spell. He can't cast anything in the book, so that's going to be just for the Fungoid. But the Madcap can still cast 1 extra spell. So if he knows Blizzard, for example, you can cast Blizzard and an Endless Spell, or Blizzard and Mystic Shield. So, good. More key units. Stabas, great for grabbing objectives in a light model army. Fantastic. Marshcrawler Sloggoth, giving all of your units +1 to hit can feel strong. I think it's less good in Trogs than it is in Squigs. Right, everything that you have is on 3s, but still 2 ups, right? Like a 2 up to hit on a Rockgut feels good. right? It feels good. It has a deep... This army has a deep roster of war scrolls. Add to your army whatever you feel like you're missing. There's lots of good random things that you can pick. Spider Riders can be good. Rippa Snarlfangs and Snarlfang Riders can be good. Sneaky Snufflers can be good. You can put 5-up wards on things that are squishier in the unit. You can also play some Squig Herd if you wanted to be aggressive and throw stuff at your opponent super early, right? There's lots of different... This army is quite big, and so you can sort of grab whatever it is that you think you're going to need and throw it in the list. You don't have to play only Trogs, right? Like you can branch out and play more than that. So battalions, Troggoth heavies. So a Troggoth heavies battalion is just a Dankhold Troggoth boss. So this is either Trug or a Trog boss, and a Dankhold Troggoth. So that's pretty cool. And what it gives you is an extra enhancement. So that's okay. I think an extra spell is good. I think there's lots of good options. You could take an artifact power on a Trog, and you also give something to like a Fungoid. You know, there's lots of good, like you could do a staff of Sneaky Stealin' and a 4-up ward on the Trog boss. Those things seem good. You could also take Warlord Battalion, so you could just get more and more enhancements, right? You could do an extra spell and you could do something else. Very, very good. Battle Regiment, opponent likely to make you go first, so unpack and get ready for the double. We are a castle army after all, aren't we? So taking a Battle Regiment, I'm not sure how important, like I'm not, again, making these videos, part of this is so that I learn and I get better and you guys point things out where I'm incorrect, like where I'm wrong. But from what I kind of understand is that like we don't care if we go first or second as much as some armies do. Like going second right now feels like the way to go, but like if we're going, armies that are okay to go first are armies that are fine to accept a double turn. So on turn 1, we buff, we unpack our castle as little as possible to get a 5-point turn, right? So it's like we're going to do magical dominance, move everything forward, get our 1-2 more, right? Get our 5-point turn, and then we're going to sit there. And if our opponent wants to come at us and double turn us right there, it's like, okay, well, like we're going to be an army that's actually better equipped to deal with this than most, especially if we're in a mega mob subfaction. You know, we can just kind of like take all of these hits with our wards and our 3-up saves, and after they've double turned us, we're ready to actually beat the tar out of them. And for the rest of the game, that double turn threat is on our side of the table, or at least, you know, until we get a chance to double turn. So I don't know, I'm not sure how important it is for us to be like 2 drops or 3 drops. So if you're not going to be if you're not going to be a 1 to 3 drop list, then lean into it and just take more enhancements, right? You could also do Andorian Locusts, you know, so if you have 2 little wizards, let's say you go like a Fungoid and a Madcap, boom, there you go, Andorian Locust Battalion, and then you do a Troggoth Heavy Battalion, so that's 3 of our heroes. And if you have 6 heroes, you could also fit in a Battle Regiment, right? And there you go, you get 2 extra enhancements, Andorian Locusts, ready to go. Sorry, so it's Troggoth Heavy, Andorian Locusts, and Warlord. Like, seems good to me, man. Seems good to me. Grand strategy, Chasing the Moon. This is very easy to get. You either park your general by the Loon Shrine or stand him next to Scragrot. If your general is a Troggoth, Dankhold Troggoth, Trog boss, then it's pretty easy to keep him alive, right? 4-up ward, no problem. Easy game. There's also a scheme for every occasion. This one is too rigid. It makes you choosing between a tactic and your grand strategy. So a scheme for every occasion says that, let's see, when the battle ends, you complete this grand strategy if you completed at least 4 battle tactics, and all of the tactics you completed were from the Nasty Tricks list. So it's going to come up over the course of the game where there is a battle tactic that is easy for you to get that's from the GHB, but this grand strategy is incentivizing you to take battle tactics from your book. And so it puts you in a rough situation where you're like, well, I'm less likely to get this battle tactic, but I need this battle tactic for my grand strategy, and that's bad. Don't put yourself in a position where you're having to choose between 2 possible benefits, right? Where it's like, if I choose this, I don't get that. Like, you don't want to set that up for yourself. You want to leave all your options open as much as possible. We have Protect the Shrine. This, in my opinion, this one gives too much power to your opponent. Your opponent knows that they can just smash to rubble it, and that's it. They also know that they can just be within 12 inches of it, and that denies your grand strat, so it's too easy for your opponent to deny Protect a Shrine. And then that's it. There's there's the Superior Spellflinger. When the battlefield ends, you complete this grand strat if there are 2 or more friendly Gitz endless spells on the battlefield. Also terrible. Your opponent like can just be like, oh, like well I'm gonna definitely do everything I can to get rid of those, right? Like, so that's not very good. If I had to pick one from the General's Handbook, I would pick Control the Nexus. Not that I think that this is going to be particularly good. To be honest, I think that Chasing the Moon is just the way to go. I think that Chasing the Moon is straight up just the best. But if I had to pick Control the Nexus, when the battlefield ends, you complete this grand strat if 2 or more friendly wizard units are wholly within 6 inches of the center of the battlefield. If I had to pick one, that's the one I would pick. But I don't have to pick one because I can pick Chasing the Moon. So here's our book battle tactics. Follow the Moon is S tier. It's great for the turn. The Moon is board wide. Very good. Glory Grabbers is B tier, right? It's best in King's Gitz. You have to bring stuff back to be able to get this. So if you're playing King's Gitz, then you can, and Clammy Hand, right? If you're playing both of those, then you can kind of get this one better. Venomous Assault is obviously F tier. We're not playing Spiderfang. Stab Him in the Dark is really good. This is where you kill things in the dark. It's better later in the game when the moon has passed. Needs a little bit of planning, but can be really good. Stab Him in the Dark, it might actually be really tough in Trogs because you tend to want everything to be in the light all the time. So this would be like a good Boingrot Bounders objective to, or battle tactic to get. Moonlight Raid is an S. You're going to be doing this anyway, right? Killing things under the light. Sure, perfect, no problem. You ain't so big. It's an A in this army and a B in every other army. But the Trogs can kill monsters. So this one is, you pick one enemy monster on the battlefield, you complete this tactic if that monster was slain by attacks made by a friendly Troggoth unit this turn. So kill a monster with Trogs. You have lots of Trogs that deal lots of damage. You just got to kill them. Yeah, so overall there are 3 consistent that you can achieve. Like, Follow Damoon is easy. Moonlight Raid is easy. You Ain't So Big is pretty easy. And Stab Him in the Dark is also pretty easy. So 2 S tier, 2 A tier in our book. We are looking good. We are looking good. And then from the GHB, Intimidate the Invaders is good. Move the castle forward. S tier. What else is going to be really strong for us? Magical Dominance can just be really good turn 1. Magical Dominance is great turn 1. Led into the Maelstrom, right? You have a Trogboss or Trug that just charge in with your Rock Guts, right? Like, it can be pretty easy to achieve that. So, yeah, I mean, looking pretty good. Reprisals B tier, Endless Expropriation is B tier, Magical Mayhem is B tier, Bait and Trap is probably F tier. You're probably not running enough units to make this work, but, you know, our battle tactics are looking solid. Battle tactics are looking really good. Is that the end? That's the end. Yeah, that's it. So, let me know what you think. I mean, was there something I missed out? What's your opinion here? The last thing I wanted to comment is on the Trugs. Like, is the big? No, it's not called the Big Stomp. Where like the Army of Renown for Trug. It's good. It's one of the better ones. I don't think it's better than just the straight up army. If you're looking from a competitive standpoint, I think you don't take the Army of Renown. But if you're doing it just from a fun standpoint, where you want to just run all Trogs, and you want to just have all like these really crazy effects that affect your whole army, seems good to me. It's less consistent. I think it's less competitive, but I do think it's among the strongest of the armies of Renown. I think it's among the strongest. So you can definitely give it a try. Let me know what you think. Like, subscribe. Wah.